Hey everyone, it's Rye, bringing you a video on Aztecs. In this video, I'm going to try to cover kind of how to play them, how I prefer to play them, and some things you need to think about when playing them. This is a very, very popular Civ. It was a base game Civ, so most people should know their strengths. And I'm just going to go ahead and say it. I don't think this is a wide Civ. A lot of people think that there's some hidden Aztec tech that you can just play wide and have a good game and whatever. Every time I've tried playing wide Aztec, you run into the exact same problem that you'd expect to have, which is you don't have the happiness to support it and you grow way too quickly. In theory, if you're able to support the happiness, Aztecs is the best Liberty Civ in the game. That's a given. But it's not possible to support the happiness. It's genuinely, it's so incredibly hard because all you're doing is growing nonstop. There's so much food that if you're going to play this Civ and someone declares war on you, you're going to fall instantly unhappy. The other thing is because you're spawning pretty much always in the jungle, it's very high density food, like tons of bananas, whatever. Your base food yield is always going to be really, really high, which kind of couples with what I'm going to be talking about next. So I would highly recommend just playing tall. That being said, there's some things you really need to keep in mind. Aztecs is one of the best scaling tall civs in the game. They essentially have the best overflow for food. It comes online the fastest. They have a way to finish tradition without Oracle. And because they grow so fast, this is true. This is the only tradition civ that needs 3 workers per city. Most tradition civs you can get away with 2. Some you can get away with less. This you need 3. you actually need 3. It's crazy how many workers you need because you're just always going to be growing into new pop. Usually you can start deleting workers by like late Renaissance era. But yeah. Anyway, Aztecs, in my opinion, is a very, very strong civ. I think it's appropriately rated. A lot of people really fear it. Some people think it's overrated, and honestly, I think that's a good place for it. I think in general, it's very, very powerful. I think the people who think it's weak haven't had good opponents play Aztec. You will not be able to keep up with Aztec's pop. It's impossible. The base food, the food overflow, it's crazy. So what makes them so good? Well, first of all, the floating gardens is probably one of the best buildings in the game. Just full stop. It's so incredibly strong because it provides 10% base food. That's not like, oh, food on carryover or whatever. No. That's the honor finisher. You get the honor finisher as your fucking watermill, right? I can't express just how insane that is. And it was nerfed from 15. Good job, base game, you fucking moron. But like, in all seriousness, this is probably like the single strongest building. It comes at such a great time. You finish your granaries. You know, you just go right into this sometimes. It's like you sell the city and just build this because it's so crazy. Um, it's amazing. When you're playing Aztecs, there's a couple things you got to keep in mind. One, you're going to need a lot of workers. It's common on Aztecs that you're just going to tech right to bronze, and then you're going to go calendar. And when you do that, you're going to go 3 workers before settlers. The reason you're going 3 workers is so you can chop them all out and you can start improving your tiles so you're never settling unhappy. We're not going to talk about the Jaguar. It's pretty irrelevant to the game for the most part. It's a fine unit. It has a great ability for jungle bias, but for the most part, it's pretty useless. The main thing that makes Aztec really scale well, in addition to the floating gardens, right, is their ability, sacrificial captives. Now, I'm gonna one last thing before I kind of get to that is Aztecs is a phenomenal honor second civ. Okay, honor scales really well with Aztecs because I mean sacrificial captives does stack, which is great. The other thing that's important to note is I believe it stacks. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you get obviously the gold and I'm not sure about the culture stacking. It might cap out. I think it caps out at whichever one's higher, but the gold and whatever's obviously stacked. The main reason I think it's really good is if you can get if you can get 2 instances of 10% food, you may as well just have an unlimited supply of food. The second thing is, these buildings are so incredibly helpful for flipping cities. When you take a city and you kill someone, oftentimes there's this ramp up curve between when the city becomes useful and when you take it. This is your bridge. This will always make the city useful. This will help speed it up tremendously because you're going to grow so fast. My preferred way to play is tradition, like I said before. I think it's just a very, very strong tradition civ in general. And it is scary. So let's talk about kind of some of the Aztec quirks, some things you need to keep in mind. This is not a high roll civ by any means, but it is a low roll civ. I rolled one time and I got this. This is my spot. It's a good cap, but not for Aztecs. Only on Aztecs would I recommend you move to this river. You need to be on fresh water to play this civ pretty much. Now, is it impossible not to? No, of course not. But I don't think you can play tradition really without doing it. So in this instance, I would 100% move to this river and then probably settle like another expand like down here or something. So I could set one here, one here, one here, and then either one up here or one on this river or wherever, right? This is super fucking weird land, but the point remains, like, you always need to be on river if you can. Does it matter if there's only like one tile? No, because the scaling you gain from being on the river is infinite compared to the scaling you lose not. So let's just like let's say for sake of argument you don't settle on river. Again, it's not the end of the world, but I've like, for instance, tournament games have been won where Aztec wasn't on river, but it's a huge gut shot if you don't have it. But I kind of want to, for demonstrator purposes, let me just kind of show you like some cool things to keep in mind. First, when you're playing Aztecs, one thing that really helps you finish tradition is settling these kinds of cities, right? Let's say, for instance, that we're here. This allows me to farm the camp, right? I can infinitely farm the camp. I'll have to put a unit here to make sure my worker is safe from the barb. But for the most part, don't look at like where the city is, for instance. Just kind of understand, like, this is very common in Honor, a very common practice in Honor to settle 2 tiles away from a camp so you can shoot it with the city. Same idea for Aztec. If you can set this up, you don't need Oracle. In fact, you can probably skip Oracle, take every other wonder. Like, I love on Aztec, one of my favorite things is skip Oracle if I have one of these set up. Get a fast, great library. You know, get Petra, get whatever, and then still make it to Civil with finishing tradition very quickly. So this is one thing you can keep in mind. If you can set this up, it's super, super great. You can actually set it up more often than not. It's obviously going to be in an expand, but more often than not, I'd say like there's an opportunity to do so. Whether the city is worthwhile is something else, but you know, in this case, like, yeah, of course you want to set that up. Maybe even put it like here, right here, and that'd be great. Anyway, so let me just kind of show you like how stupid this civ is. Let's say I'm only using a GDR here just for demonstrator purposes. Let's say we're in like landship war and we're like fighting someone in landships, right? And maybe our culture is low. It doesn't matter, because if I do this, I just gained 60 fucking culture from killing a single unit. You know how many landships die per turn? Probably like 2 or 3, maybe on landship war. It's like 2 or 3-ish. Okay, that's 180 culture per turn from fucking killing units. Let's say, like, hypothetically, let's just say we kill a GDR, right? Oh, and by the way, this is super useful. This kind of culture generation is super useful for when you get into the early game, because it helps you open tradition faster. Killing these units, it's almost like the idea behind having honor, where you want to kill ideally you want to kill a barbarian because that barbarian will, you know, get you the warrior policy sooner, whatever. I've talked about this in my honor guide, so go check that out if you haven't seen it. But this idea definitely want to use on Aztec, because the faster you start legalism, the faster that 2 culture you get, the faster you can open tradition, the faster that 3 culture you get, and then the faster that compounds with legalism. It's very possible that, let's say you kill a barb, that's 8 culture right there. Let's say you do it on turn 7. You're opening tradition before Liberty players would. After that, it's 4 turns. People are opening Liberty by the time you're picking legalism. The person, your tradition opponent, hasn't even fucking opened tradition. They won't for 4 turns. At that rate, you're almost at landed elite, right? So like you can kind of see how this kind of compounds and why killing units is so good. Let's just say, like, hypothetically, like, you're super late game, you're killing GDRs, right? 240 culture. I mean, I think this just, like, finishes the whole fucking... No, it doesn't. Almost. 240 culture for killing a single unit. This is one of the reasons why Aztec is so incredible in the late game. They artificially generate culture like no other civ in the game. You think like France is a culture tree? Bro, Aztecs will put that shit to shame. It's incredible. This civ is like nothing else. It is so fun to kind of farm late game units, because it makes you feel like the civ is playing a different game almost, right? Because you're able to keep up with like every other, you're able to keep up with an aesthetics player just because you're playing this civ and you're warring, right? No other civ is like that. I wanted to keep this video short, so I'm gonna stop it now. Hopefully this was illustrative. Hopefully you guys learned something. Hopefully you understand why Aztecs is so good. My favorite thing to do on Aztecs is either play aesthetics, because you're able to stack all your guilds in one city. Then you can build like, you know, Alhambra and Hermitage, and you'll be putting like 400 culture per turn. It's pretty crazy. All that can be in your cap, because your cap will be like 40 pop by turn 100 or some shit. But I love either, you know, you can finish, or if you go Aztecs and you finish Oracle, that is like the fastest aesthetics opener ever. Or that's the fastest like aesthetics 1 policy ever, which is how you start the aesthetics Steam engine. Or you can push Patro. But most commonly, my favorite thing is just honor. Honor into either crossbows, because remember, when you're killing units, one of the really rocky things when you're playing tradition, especially if you don't get Oracle, is when you're playing crossbow tradition and then you're trying to kill, or you're trying to open honor, this guarantees you'll open honor. This guarantees you'll be 2 or 3 points into honor by the time that you finish. So Aztec crossbow is super good. If I'm having a really fast sim game, which is very common on Aztecs, honestly, I often find myself going into Ed and straight into RDCav, because the way RDCav works is you're going to be able to finish all of honor, and you'll be able to dip into ratio because your tech is so good. Because, you know, you're having a strong game, your pop's really high. It fixes a lot of the problems that a weak RD game would have, where, you know, maybe you're barely getting there, and after RDs you're kind of just like, fuck, I don't know what to do. You don't really have that problem with this civ. So that's all I'm going to cover today. Hopefully you guys learned something. Hopefully this has been helpful. Feel free to leave comments below on things I missed, on things you wish I covered. Aztecs in general is a pretty simple civ. The main thing is staying happy. The main thing is having enough workers. But yeah, let me know if you have any questions. Feel free to leave comments on civs you'd like to see me talk about next. Following this one, we'll have Shoshone. But until next time, thanks for watching.